At the bottom of the modern ocean, remotely operated vehicles drift past slopes of sediment where light has not reached for millions of years. Occasionally, their cameras reveal shapes that seem strangely familiar, yet profoundly altered, echoing forms known only from stone. Some of these depths preserve fossils of creatures that once lived under pressures we can barely replicate, suggesting that the deep ocean has long followed rules different from the surface. What does it mean when evolution unfolds where sunlight never arrives? Geological records indicate that even in the distant past, vast portions of Earth's oceans were dark, cold, and compressed beneath kilometers of water. As depth increased, pressure multiplied, temperature stabilized near freezing, and energy became scarce. These conditions did not merely challenge life, they redirected it, shaping bodies and behaviors that appear increasingly alien the farther down we look. How far could life be pushed before it stopped resembling anything familiar? This documentary follows that descent, guided by the idea captured in the title, "The deeper you go, the more alien prehistoric oceans become." It asks how increasing depth and pressure influenced ancient marine organisms, gradually bending biological rules toward unfamiliar solutions. At what point does adaptation stop looking like refinement and start looking like reinvention? Understanding this matters because the deep ocean remains one of the least explored environments on Earth, and the fossil record there is fragmentary at best. Many deep-sea strategies likely left no trace at all, while others persist today in modified forms. If ancient oceans grew more alien with depth, what lessons might still be waiting in the darkness below modern seas? In the deep prehistoric ocean, light did not simply fade, it vanished entirely. Below a few hundred meters, sunlight scattered into nothing, leaving predators to navigate a world defined by pressure and shadow. Fossils suggest that some marine reptiles descended into these zones repeatedly, adapting their senses to conditions where vision should have been useless. Why would evolution invest in sight where there was almost nothing to see? Ophthalmosaurus, a Jurassic ichthyosaur, is often cited for its enormous eye sockets, some of the largest relative to body size ever recorded in vertebrates. These eyes may have gathered even the faintest traces of bioluminescence or residual light from above. Bone structure suggests forward-facing orientation, which could improve depth perception in dim conditions. Was this an advantage gained only by hunting where others could not? Another marine reptile, Phosphosaurus, shows a different visual strategy. Its eyes were smaller but positioned to face forward, hinting at a reliance on binocular vision rather than raw light collection. This configuration may have allowed precise strikes at close range, where prey briefly revealed itself. Does this imply that deep water hunting favored accuracy over awareness? At depth, pressure increases rapidly, affecting not just bones but soft tissues like eyes. Large eyes require support and protection, and maintaining them is energetically expensive. The fact that some species retained or enlarged visual systems suggests that even minimal visual information carried survival value. How valuable must a single flash of light have been in such darkness? Yet vision has limits, especially as depth increases beyond where any light penetrates. Fossil evidence and modern analogues indicate that some lineages gradually reduced their reliance on sight. Enlarged eyes appear in some depths, then disappear entirely in others. What happens when seeing becomes more costly than blindness? As organisms moved deeper, the logic of perception itself began to change. Vision, once dominant near the surface, became optional or even obsolete. If some predators gave up sight altogether, What senses replaced it in the deepest prehistoric oceans? In the absence of light, elegance offered little advantage. Deep ocean predators appear to have favored weapons that worked instantly and reliably, even if they looked extreme by surface standards. Fossils and living descendants suggest that form followed function, with little concern for balance or symmetry. What mattered was not beauty, but whether a single encounter could be decisive. Modern viperfish provide a useful reference point for understanding this strategy. Their oversized fangs, too large to fit inside their mouths, fold back when not in use. Similar mechanical solutions appear repeatedly in deep-sea lineages, indicating long-term stability rather than experimentation. Why change a design that works under constant pressure and darkness? The goblin shark represents another approach, with jaws that project forward at high speed to seize prey before it can react. This protrusion reduces the need for pursuit, conserving energy in an environment where calories are rare. Fossil relatives suggest that this ambush strategy has existed for tens of millions of years. Is speed less important than surprise when movement is costly? Frilled sharks, often described as primitive, demonstrate yet another solution. Their elongated bodies and needle-like teeth form a trap rather than a bite, holding prey once contact is made. The basic structure of this design appears largely unchanged over vast spans of geological time. Does stability itself become a form of success in the deep ocean? Pressure adds another constraint, affecting bone flexibility and muscle performance. Jaw mechanisms that rely on leverage and sudden extension may function more reliably than those requiring sustained force. These predators did not need to overpower prey for long, only long enough. What does this suggest about the pace of life at depth? Taken together, these weapons imply that survival did not depend on speed, intelligence, or adaptability in the usual sense. Instead, it favored designs that ignored refinement and focused on inevitability. In such an environment, was persistence more valuable than innovation? Not all deep-sea organisms face the challenge of hunting at all. In environments where encounters were rare and energy scarce, some species evolved strategies that reduced or eliminated the need for predation. Fossil evidence and modern examples suggest that survival could depend more on minimizing effort than on acquiring food. What happens to evolution when avoiding action becomes the safest path? Deep-sea anglerfish illustrate one of the most extreme solutions to isolation. In several species, males permanently fuse to females, becoming little more than reproductive appendages. This arrangement ensures reproduction in a habitat where meeting another individual may be unlikely within a lifetime. Is individuality still meaningful when encounters are measured in years or decades? This reproductive strategy appears to be a response to vast distances and darkness rather than aggression or dominance. The male gains guaranteed access to reproduction, while the female avoids the energy cost of searching. Such fusion removes the need for repeated mating behaviors entirely. Could dependence itself become an efficient adaptation? Scavengers offer another model of survival without active predation. Many deep-sea organisms feed on organic material drifting down from above, a slow and unpredictable resource. Fossils suggest that some ancient species were adapted to long periods of inactivity, punctuated by brief feeding opportunities. How patient must an organism be when food arrives without warning? In these depths, metabolic rates are often lower and growth can be slow. Reducing movement conserves energy and limits exposure to danger. Over evolutionary time, this favors forms that endure rather than pursue? Does survival here depend more on waiting than on acting? Some lineages appear to have solved the problem of scarcity by abandoning independence altogether, whether through fusion, symbiosis, or passivity. These strategies challenge surface assumptions about competition and autonomy. If survival does not require constant action, what other biological rules begin to dissolve? Far below the reach of sunlight, entire ecosystems formed around chemistry rather than photosynthesis. Hydrothermal vents, driven by volcanic heat and mineral-rich fluids, created pockets of energy in an otherwise barren seafloor. Fossil evidence suggests that such systems have existed for hundreds of millions of years. How does life organize itself when sunlight is no longer the foundation? Tube worms are among the most recognizable inhabitants of these environments. They lack mouths and digestive systems, relying instead on symbiotic bacteria housed within their tissues. These bacteria convert chemicals like hydrogen sulfide into usable energy through chemosynthesis. What does it mean for an organism to outsource feeding entirely? The temperatures around vents can shift dramatically over short distances, from near freezing to well above boiling. Chemical concentrations are often toxic by surface standards, yet life persists within narrow tolerance zones. This creates a landscape of sharp boundaries rather than gradual transitions. How precise must adaptation be to survive such instability? Fossilized vent communities indicate that these ecosystems were transient, forming and collapsing as geological activity changed. Species adapted not to permanence, but to colonization and rapid growth when conditions allowed. Longevity depended on flexibility rather than strength. Can instability itself drive evolutionary success? Symbiosis appears repeatedly in these environments, suggesting that cooperation offered resilience against chemical extremes. By sharing metabolic roles, organisms reduced individual vulnerability. Over deep time, this pattern remained remarkably consistent. Does partnership become more reliable than independence under constant stress? These vent ecosystems show that stability does not always arise from calm conditions. Instead, it can emerge within chaos, maintained by precise biological balances. In such places, life followed rules unfamiliar at the surface. If order can exist here, where else might it arise unnoticed? In the deepest and most stable regions of the prehistoric ocean, time itself became a selective force. With little light, minimal disturbance, and scarce food, rapid responses offered few advantages. Fossils from these environments suggest that patience, rather than speed, often determined survival. What kind of life thrives when change is slow? Some trilobite species that inhabited deeper waters show reduced or entirely absent eyes. In darkness, maintaining vision provided no benefit, yet required energy and development. These blind forms indicate a shift toward sensory simplification rather than enhancement. Is losing a sense sometimes the most efficient adaptation? Giant isopods, whose lineage extends deep into the fossil record, reveal another aspect of this strategy. Their ability to survive months or even years between meals reflects an extreme tolerance for scarcity. Such endurance reduces the need for constant movement or risk-taking. How long can an organism afford to wait? Sea lilies or crinoids present a different form of patience. Anchored to the seafloor or elevated on long stalks, they fed passively on particles drifting past. This vertical feeding strategy minimized energy expenditure while maximizing opportunity. Does stillness become a form of efficiency at depth? Compared to surface ecosystems where urgency dominates, the deep ocean rewards conservation over reaction. growth may be slow, reproduction infrequent, and movement rare. Over evolutionary time, these traits remained viable. What does this say about the assumed link between activity and success? These organisms suggest that awareness, speed, and complexity are not universal requirements for survival. In some environments, simply enduring may be enough. If patience can be adaptive, how many other assumptions about life begin to weaken as depth increases? As depth increased, some prehistoric organisms evolved forms that strain modern definitions of anatomy and function. Their bodies do not clearly signal how they moved, fed, or interacted with their surroundings. Fossils preserve their outlines, but not the rules that shaped them. At what point does classification begin to fail? Diplomachus, an extinct ammonite with a long, looping shell, defies the streamlined logic expected of active swimmers. Its shape suggests slow movement or even passive drifting, yet it survived in deep marine environments for millions of years. The shell's geometry may have balanced buoyancy rather than speed. What pressures favored such an inefficient form? Even more enigmatic is Charnia, an ancient organism preserved in deep water sediments from the Ediacaran period. Its fractal, leaf-like body shows no obvious mouth, gut, or sensory organs. Evidence indicates it lived anchored to the seafloor, absorbing nutrients directly from the water. How does an organism function without structures we consider essential? These forms appear to represent evolutionary experiments that left no modern descendants. Their disappearance does not imply failure, only that their solutions were bound to specific conditions that no longer exist. Fossil interpretation remains limited by what soft tissues never preserved. How many other designs vanished without leaving a trace? Deep time adds another layer of uncertainty. Some lineages persisted for tens of millions of years before disappearing abruptly, while others left only a brief geological signature. The deeper the environment, the fewer the fossils that survive. Does absence reflect rarity or simply invisibility? These organisms remind us that much of prehistoric deep-sea life may never be known at all. What we see is filtered by pressure, decay, and chance. If such alien forms once thrived, what proportion of deep ocean evolution remains permanently hidden? As this descent through prehistoric oceans shows, depth acted as a powerful evolutionary filter. Increasing pressure, darkness, and scarcity did not merely modify existing life forms, they rewarded entirely different biological logic. Vision became optional, movement slowed, independence dissolved, and stability emerged from extremes. In this context, what appears alien is often simply efficient under unfamiliar rules. Many of these strategies did not vanish with deep time. They persist today in modified forms, carried by descendants that still inhabit the ocean's depths. The deep sea is not a graveyard of failed experiments, but a refuge for solutions that never needed the surface. How many modern species still carry ancient adaptations shaped far below the reach of light? Despite advances in exploration, the deep ocean remains largely unmapped and its fossil record incomplete. Each new dive reveals organisms that challenge existing assumptions about life's limits. If the past teaches us that the deeper you go, the more alien oceans become, what discoveries still wait beneath pressures we have yet to explore?